Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us for today's third and final battleground survey announcement from AERP Wisconsin. We're really excited to have you here with us, and we're really excited to release these final numbers before we get to Election Day on November 3rd. Just a couple housekeeping items. If you do want to see the full results of the poll, including all the demographics and each of the measures that we had in the poll, make sure you go to our website, aerp.org/WI poll. Again, that's aerp.org/WI poll, and you'll get the full details there. Of course, we're going to release some of the top lines this morning, including favorabilities for the major candidates for president. We're going to talk about head-to-head. We're also going to talk a little bit about people's preferences for voting and how they're feeling about the coronavirus pandemic in their lives. So make sure you're tuned in throughout this live announcement this morning. I do want to remind folks that AERP has a nearly 40-year tradition of nonpartisan voter engagement and voter education activities. And this year, we started our campaign in August, the Protect Voters 50 Plus campaign, which was all about really two major goals: making sure people have the information they need to vote safely, whether at their home, whether in-person absentee, or voting in person on election day. And we also know that 50 plus voters really want the candidates to focus on the issues. We know the pandemic has changed things dramatically in our society, but 50 plus voters expect candidates for office to have specific positions on issues that impact the 50 plus, like Medicare, Social Security, prescription drugs, supporting caregivers, and protecting loved ones who are in nursing homes and other long-term care facilities. So it's really important that now more than ever, as people are voting earlier than ever because of the pandemic, that candidates are out there stating their positions so voters know exactly where they stand on issues of importance to the 50 plus. So with that, let's get to the release of the data. So I want to first talk a little bit about the demographics of our poll. This poll was in the field from October 1st to October 5th. There were 658 50 plus Wisconsin likely voters. The margin of error for all of the data is plus or minus 3.82%. So keep that in mind as you're hearing the data that we share. I also want to talk a little bit about the political ideology of our respondents. 35% of them identified themselves as a Democrat or strong Democrat. 37% identified themselves as a Republican or strong Republican, and 23% of them identified themselves as independent. And there were 4% that described themselves as others. What do we know about the 50 plus population? They turn out to vote and are always the most important voting bloc in every election, and that will continue this November. As we look at our response data, are you planning to vote in the 2020 election? 95% of respondents said they were absolutely certain to show up or vote early for president, and 4% were very likely. So between the absolutely certain and the very likelies, you have 99% of the 50 plus respondents planning to vote this November. Also, a little bit of demographics on where our voters were located. 37% indicated they lived in a city, 28% said they lived in the suburbs, and 35% said they lived in a rural and less developed area. So that should give us some of the demographics that we're dealing with. Also, again, you can go to aerp.org/WI poll. Again, aerp.org/WI poll to see all the specifics of our survey data. So let's get right to it. So let's first talk about favorability. When we look at favorability as a measure of each of the candidates, you will see that Donald Trump currently has a favorability rating of 50, an unfavorability rating of 48. Compare that to Joe Biden at this point, has a favorability rating of 48% and an unfavorability rate of 50%. So a slight change from our September data. which essentially had a flip for both of those candidates. Certainly, it looks like there's a slight uptick for the president and just an ever so slight downtick for the vice president. But again, well within the margin of error, so not a lot of movement in favorability. The horse race between President Donald Trump and Vice President Joe Biden, again, not a lot of movement between the early September numbers and the October numbers. At this point, we have from our respondents 46% supporting President Donald Trump, 49% supporting Vice President Joe Biden, and still remaining about 4% who remain undecided. We did have, for the first time, a 1% show up that says they will not vote or will not vote for president. So, interestingly enough, but again, very close margins between the president and the vice president, again, here in October, but the numbers are holding pretty firm with the vice president, at least at this point, holding a slim margin. The one area where we typically want to look to is how people are feeling about the pandemic and how is that going to impact the way they vote. So typically, when we asked folks how they intended to vote, or how did they traditionally vote? About 73% back in September said that they would traditionally go in person, with about 14% doing early absentee and about 13% voting absentee by mail. Of course, those numbers have dramatically changed. As of October, amongst our respondents, only 43% plan on visiting the polls. 17% indicate that they're going to cast their ballot in person during early voting, and about 38% indicated that they're going to vote absentee by mail. So a very dramatic shift, as is probably expected. But when you compare those numbers to September, those numbers are increasing, and we think that that may be in response to some of the increased virus activity in Wisconsin over the last month, as those numbers of individuals who are planning to vote in person at the polling place have gone down several percentage points, and those who plan on vote absentee by mail have also reciprocally gone up several percentage points as well. The last bit of data that I want to share with you all, and I think it's really interesting because we just, as probably we all know, just saw a vice presidential debate last evening, and there's a lot of mail coming into homes. There's a lot of ads on TV. We're seeing billboards pop up. So we asked the question, where do people get the most information that they rely on to learn about candidates who are running for office? I think this is a really interesting question because there's a lot of discussion about the influence that social media has on individuals who are making their decisions as to who they vote for. So I want to tell you probably the top 5 areas here that our respondents indicated was where they get the information that they rely on to determine presidential candidates. Number 1 was the news media. That includes television, that includes newspapers, radio, online websites, or news aggregator sites. So that's at 61%. So the vast majority of folks remain getting their most trusted information from television, newspapers, pretty traditional sources of information. Now, what we have next is a little bit of a conundrum because we've got other at 10. So we don't really have a real good understanding of what that 10% means when they say other. But I would say third highest at 9% is watching candidate debates. So for 9% of our respondents, events like last night's presidential debate and the previous presidential debate is where they rely on getting their most reliable information for selecting who they're going to vote for president. After that, number 4 is attending or watching candidate events. I know that we have that's slightly, of course, down as fewer and fewer candidates hold live events, but some of them have gone virtual, which we know, but that's about 7% rely on some type of either attending or watching candidate events to make their determination. And then 5th, there's really a tie at this point, ads on TV or streaming apps on websites, sort of tied with Facebook and Twitter and other social media, which is at about 3%. So at least I find that really interesting, that Facebook and Twitter gets a lot of attention for information that's on those platforms as well as on websites, but only about 3% of folks use those to get the information they rely on to make their determinations. And the lowest of them all, when we get down to the bottom selection, was information you receive in the mail. So any of those postcards and mailers you're getting, that affects a very small percentage of folks. So with that, that's our third and final AERP Wisconsin Battleground Survey announcement for election 2020. Most importantly, we hope that you make a plan to vote, that you keep yourself and your family safe during these extremely difficult times. And as always, you can go to aerp.org/WI, aerp.org/WI for AERP Wisconsin's most up-to-date information on our webpage, including links to important election information, and again, how to keep you safe no matter how you choose to vote this fall. So thanks for tuning in. And as always, we appreciate all the work that everyone is doing out there to keep yourselves, your loved ones, and your friends and family safe. And we look forward to talking to you again soon on our live platforms here at AERP Wisconsin. Have a great day.